I hired my first coach back somewhere around the end of March or the beginning of April 2016. And that's right after I had been terminated, and right after everything fell apart. That's when literally my life just looked like a big pile of ashes. And I was 300 pounds, suicidal, drinking at ridiculously toxic levels. And my marriage was in flames. My family was in flames, just infighting. My kids were being raised in an abusive environment, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, abusive environment. There was just nothing good about my life and where I was. And right before I hired my coach, I put a pistol in my mouth and almost pulled the trigger, but um, I didn't, obviously, and that's when I knew I had to do something different, and I started to hit the reset on my life. But I hired my first coach, and he gave me, for our first call, he gave me some very, very simple assignments. He gave me a few books to read. He gave me an assignment to sit in silence and stillness. And he also, and just like sit in nothingness. And I mean, waking nothingness. But he also gave me tasks to meditate for a few minutes and to journal what I was thinking and feeling. Now, looking back, looking back at where I am now and where I was, what he was trying to do is that he gave me the book assignments, but he was really trying to get me to be able to and be willing to sit with myself and understand what was happening in my mind and my body. He was hoping, he didn't express it this way. He was looking to get me focused on my inner world and stop focusing so much on the outer world. Stop focusing on the circumstances that I had in my life. Stop focusing on my health. Stop focusing on my job. Stop focusing on my money. Stop focusing on my wife and kids for a short period of time, and really just collapse and just collapse all of my focus and attention of what was inside of me. Now, I was 43 years old. And if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, any period of time, I grew up in a religion, and inside of that religion, it was taught that all of the answers that you need are outside of you. The answers are not inside of you. The answers of the world are outside of you, and you basically the teachings, whether that was intended or not, the teachings that I took away is that you are a shameful being. You are a sinner. You are broken. You are helpless. You cannot fend for yourself. And all you need to do is reject yourself and reach out to a God that loves you and very much. And if you don't reach out, or if you depend on yourself, then God will send you to the fiery pits of eternal damnation. But he loves you very, very much. And for 43 years, I lived in that toxic religious belief system, mindset, heart set, whether that's what was intended for me to receive as a young kid, but that is the message that I received, and that's the message that I adopted. And seeing the picture of a man crucified and with blood coming out of his hands and feet, saying that I was responsible for putting him on the cross, and he died for my sins, definitely wasn't helpful and useful for me as a child to feel safe and loved and protected and valuable and worthy and deserving of everything that I wanted in my life. And when my coach like decided to help me collapse my focus on what was happening inside of me, it was the first time I ever really paid attention to my internal environment. And I gotta admit, it was not happy, it was not healthy, it was not safe, it was not inviting, it was not encouraging, it was not inspirational. It was a war zone, and it was a battlefield of toxic thoughts and emotions and beliefs and just pain and punishment on the inside. He gave me a couple books to read. One was Think and Grow Rich. Another was Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And another was Loving What Is by a gal named Byron Katie. Now, when I cracked these books, when I first cracked them, my first thought when I started reading them was, is it even okay for me to be reading these books? Is it even okay? Is it even okay in my religion for me to be reading these books? Like, they were telling me to look inside of myself and to look into my mind, into my beliefs, challenge my beliefs, challenge my thoughts, challenge my perspectives. They were convincing me and looking to tell me to collapse my focus inward so that I could find the damage, so that I could let the damage go, so that I could transcend, I'm air quoting, transcend the damage. And I got on a call with my coach and said, I'm not even sure if this is okay inside of my religion for me to read. And when he asked me to meditate, I thought that was like going contrary to my belief system. And like, just these things that he was asking me to do, they weren't normal, they weren't typical, they weren't usual, they were unusual, they were unfamiliar, they were weird. And all they were encouraging me to do is go inside of myself to find out what was really happening and why I was so miserable. In this episode, I want to talk about that shift from religion to spirituality. That's one. But I also want to talk about the levels of consciousness and what actually transpired over the last 8 years. So when I started the journey, and as I started to read these books, and as I started to focus on what was happening in my mind and my body, and as I started paying attention to the beliefs and the perspectives and the painful ass stories that I had trapped inside of me, when I really took notice of them and I really sat with them and tried to understand them, and I journaled on them, and I got to see the chaos that was inside of me. It helped me understand that some of the belief systems, the religious beliefs, political beliefs, economic beliefs, social beliefs that have been were instilled in me for the first 43 years of my life, that I adopted, that were taught to me, that were programmed, that were scripted. Those ideologies, those philosophies from other people caused that. Now, I'm not being a victim. I'm not playing a victim. But you know what? Our belief system is built. Most of our belief system is built from the time that we are 0 to 7, 0 to 10 years old, when we are completely unconscious and we can't challenge any false beliefs. And if someone tells you there's an Easter bunny, you believe it. If someone tells you there's a Santa Claus, you believe it. If someone tells you there's a tooth fairy, you believe it, because you don't have the ability, the capacity, or the capability to challenge false beliefs. So when someone tells you making money is hard, marriage is hard, life is hard, you've got to work hard for your money. If you don't, if it's easy, it's not valuable. When you're taught these beliefs, when you're taught that you can't depend on yourself, or you're like being dishonored, you're dishonoring God. You're not worthy. When you're taught these things, you're not valuable. You are subject to God. Like God will decide what he wants in your life. You don't get a choice. Like, when you could ask, but that doesn't mean you're going to get. When you're given these beliefs, you live as if they are true, because they become the stories in your mind. They become the belief system. They become the structure. They become the perspectives through which you see life. And when you're young and when you're impressionable, you want to believe all the people in your life that you love. And even when they're telling you garbage beliefs and garbage philosophy, they're only teaching you their experience of life, or what was even taught to them, when they're just handing down their old bullshit. It's impossible for you as a little child to challenge, or to resist, or to opt out. You want to believe your dad, you want to believe your mom. So when they tell you that life is hard, you want to adopt that. You want to absorb that, because you want to make mom and dad proud. So now you're going to set out to make your life hard, because your mom and dad told you your life is hard, that life in general is hard. When when you're taught that making money is hard, when it comes easy, there's going to be a sense of guilt or shame, like something's wrong, like you're taking advantage of something. When we adopt painful ass beliefs and stories and ideologies and perspectives, and when we absorb them, adopt them, and live out of them, then typically what happens is people don't see that there's a different way to live and a different approach to life. They think their operating system is the right way to live, and they set out, and the only way to live, and they set out to live through that philosophy, that belief system, that structure, and they think everybody else who doesn't believe what they believe, that everyone else is delusional. Now, one of the things that cultish behavior does is it encourages you not to listen to anything outside of the cult and anything outside of the ideology of the teachers and any philosophy that conflicts with the teachings. And I'm not accusing anything or anyone to be part of a cult. But when you are not allowed to explore and challenge your belief system, when you are not allowed to adventure and attain new levels of wisdom and seek different philosophies and seek different perspectives, they are locking you into a philosophy, and that is cult-like behavior. And when I cracked these books, I felt a sense of shame and guilt because I was veering outside the lines. I was coloring outside the lines, and I was taught that if I ever colored outside the lines, I was going to eternal damnation and the fiery pits of hell. But God loved me. Now, it wasn't long after March of 2016 that I completely dropped any obligation, duty, responsibility that I had to a religion. And that's when my spirituality really, really took off. And what spirituality for me means, it's not worshiping God, it's merging with God. I and the Father are one, but the Father is greater than me. That's exactly what that teaching was intended, to merge with God, not worship God. My God is not a narcissist, vengeful, rageful, egotistical, jealous, punitive, conditionally loving being. My God is all love all the time and nothing but. And my God is allowing me a human experience and watching me continue to participate in a human experience, to make mistakes, to solve problems, to have victories, to have successes, to skin my knee, knowing that we're all evolving all at the same time. And I don't believe that God is a sky daddy. I just believe it's a force that contains all things seen and unseen. The isness and the nothingness. God is all things all the time and all love. And we are all part of God, one with God, and in lockstep with God. And there is no real death. There's death of the mind and the body, but we are the divine soul and the divine essence inside. There is no end to life. We don't have a life. We are life. Now, I know I'm getting really, really mystical and really spiritual and really metaphysical, but this is what has transformed my life, my state of being, my state of freedom, my state of happiness. This is what's allowed me to get up on stage and completely just share my soul and bear all, because I feel motherfucking powerful in my body, in my voice, in my self-worth, in my beingness. And religion didn't do that, but my spirituality has. Now, I want to talk about the levels of consciousness. One of the books that my first coach gave me was called a book called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. It is a dense ass read. He wrote another one called Letting Go. That's more watered down version of it, but has most of the same teachings in it. But Power versus Force is a very powerful book, and it's been a catalyst in my life for spiritual evolution. Now, what Power versus Force presents is the levels of the emotional levels of consciousness, all the way from shame, anger, apathy, the lowest levels of human existence, all the way up to joy, peace, and enlightenment. Enlightenment, just like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna and Lao Tzu and all the enlightened sages that have ever come before us. And I do believe that those were awesome teachers. And instead of honoring the teachings, we started worshiping the teachers instead of just honoring the teachings. Now, what Dr. David Hawkins presents is in the emotional scale of consciousness is that the way to move from shame into guilt is not by forcing our way into guilt. It's by letting go of shame. And the way to move from guilt to apathy is not by forcing our way from guilt to apathy, but by letting go of guilt. And the way to move from pride to courage is by letting go of pride. And the way to go from joy into peace is letting go of joy. And the way to move past or from peace to enlightenment is to let go of the need for peace. Letting go has been the way that I have increased my level of consciousness inside of my mind and my body. And it's inside of my mind and my body where I can tell that my quality of life has increased because there's no more war. There's no more voice that tears me down. There's no more internal conflict telling me I'm a bag of shit. There's no one telling me that I don't matter. There's no one telling me that nobody cares about me. There's no one telling me all these rotten ass things that I believed back in 2016. And it's those voices and those stories that have let go because of me letting go of shame, of guilt, of anger, of apathy, of jealousness, of desire, of fear. When you let go of these things, you start to rise in your level of consciousness. And all consciousness is realizing that your beliefs are limiting and false. Your thoughts are not your captors. Your emotions are just temporary feelings. Consciousness, your level of consciousness, is just realizing what's happening in your body, or consciousness in general is realizing what's happening in your mind and body. And it's as you increase in the levels of consciousness, you increase your mastery over what's happening in your mind and body. And you become more and more untriggerable over time, where circumstances outside of you do not have control over your mind and your emotions. And you don't react to your circumstances. You respond, you adjust, you adapt, you accept, you influence, but you do it from a place of response, not reaction. The way that I have grown the most over 8 years isn't by increasing my bank account, isn't by increasing my impact. It's not about writing books or even having this podcast. The way I've shifted every circumstance in my life is by increasing my level of consciousness and letting go of all the damage that was inside of me, letting go of all the shitty circumstances, thoughts, feelings, emotions, stories, beliefs, and letting go of any need to hold on to anything that was painful at all. And as you let that go, they release from your body and you no longer have to deal with that layer. There might be another layer. There's always another layer. But as you let go of story after belief after belief, after negative thought, after negative emotion, as you let go of these things, you start to rise up the level of consciousness. And as you rise up the level of consciousness, you start to feel more love and joy and peace, excitement, inspiration, enthusiasm, acceptance. Your entire internal state starts to shift. And as your internal state shifts, guess what happens in your external world? People want to be around you. You feel good to be around. People are inspired by you. They want to do business with you. As you change your inner world, everything in your external world shifts as well. This is the law of attraction. As your inner world changes, your external world changes as well. Your circumstances are just a reflection of what's happening in your mind and body. And as you change what's happening in your mind and body, everything in your entire world shifts as well. Episode 2 of this podcast is as the business owner grows, the business grows itself. That's exactly what this concept is. Your circumstances, your wealth, your health, your marriage, your happiness, your relationships are all just a reflection of your beliefs, of your programming, of your conditioning, of your thoughts, your stories, your emotions. Your outer world is just a reflection of your inner world. And as you ascend the levels of consciousness and the emotional scale of consciousness, as you let go of the old, damaged, expired traumas and beliefs and pain, and you ascend the ladder of consciousness, everything in your life shifts. Everything. And as you get higher and higher on the scale, you need nothing, but you realize you deserve everything. Guys, it all started for me in March/April of 2016 when I started like questioning and challenging my belief system. And I started going inside of my mind and my body to see what was really happening in that internal ecosystem that was causing all the chaos. Because up until that point, I thought all the chaos was being generated outside of me, but all the chaos was being driven by what was happening inside of me, because your insides create the outsides. Your inner world creates the outer world. And the outer world that you see is just a reflection of who you are. And as you change, everything changes. Challenge your belief system. Challenge your experiences, challenge your traumas, challenge your thoughts, challenge your feelings. Take some time to meditate. Take some time to journal what you're thinking and feeling. Take some time to sit in silence and stillness. Notice, become aware of what's happening inside of you, and then start the process of letting all of the damage go. The greatest thing you can do is have a mind and a body that you love sitting with, and it's peaceful, and it's prosperous, and it's loving, and it's kind, and you never need to escape it through distraction. Because you got to live with yourself for the rest of your life. So why would you live with yourself with a bunch of damaged inner conflict? Guys, love you. This has been the most open I've been about my spirituality, and I'm excited to continue this journey. This is the stuff that set me free. I hope it helps you too.